Welcome everyone to today's virtual training on the floodplain websites and tools that we think are helpful. And appreciate you all coming today. I'm Celia Strauss. I'm the Minnesota State Floodplain Manager, and I'll be the main presenter. I do have Gary Bennett, my coworker, who will be helping with monitoring chat and taking care of the recording and those things. So thanks, Gary. We will be going through quite a few slides here, and I will be providing a PDF of the slides to those of you who are attending and actually everybody who registered. So you don't have to take copious notes while we're going through here, and the PDFs will have links to the sites, and I think we'll also have a separate list of links to useful sites that we'll include. I will mention that we last offered this a couple years ago, and there were a couple of the main sites that we talk about that they've got new links since the last time we offered this training. So get moving here, and I'm gonna turn my camera off for most of this time. I think I'll go ahead and do that now so that I can focus on my slides. But again, thanks for coming. So some of the useful sites we'll be talking about, we will talk about some links we've got on the DNR's pages there, but our lake and flood elevations online, several of the FEMA sites, including the Flood Map Changes Viewer, the National Flood Hazard Layer, and the Map Service Center, they're useful for different things depending on what you're looking for. We'll have also mention of Minnesota's topography site, the MinTopo site, where you can see the elevation contours and other things. And I'll have a quick mention of some other sites, including where you can download the hydraulic models. Oops, I've got to change that title. It's not the NWI Wetland Finder anymore. It's now just the Wetland Finder, and a couple other sites that are helpful. I'm going to be taking, I'm sure, the whole hour in the presentation, but can definitely stick around if anybody would like us to demo any of these sites live, since I'm really focused on screenshots and information in the slides for this presentation today. So on the DNR floodplain site, this is the main floodplain site, we do have a reminder that we've got education and trainings, a link from our main page, and then we've got the separate pages for shoreland, floodplain, some other land use trainings, and our Water Talk newsletter. When we do have upcoming trainings like we do have now, you can go to the page and click to register and see information about the upcoming trainings. On our floodplain site, we do have information about past trainings that we've given. We've got links to those past trainings. It usually does take us a month or so to get the recordings cleaned up and add closed captioning and the things that we need to do to be able to put the links on our website. But we do have a lot of the trainings from past years and our monthly office hours. And in the PDF copy of the slides, you can use these links to the floodplain and the shoreland training pages. That's showing what the actual floodplain part of the site looks like. The other thing that's on the floodplain page is we will have any FEMA trainings, especially the regional trainings that are being offered. They have a really nice series of monthly trainings that they give, usually on the last Wednesday of the month. So we do have those registration links on our website. And another site I wanted to mention is in our regulations section. We have a link to our floodplain management quick guide. And the quick guide, we've updated it a couple times. The most recent is the 22 version. And I can remember it's the most current because in this most current, we added a photo on many of the pages. And so if the cover has that photo, you know you've got the most recent version. We did some reorganization and got some kind of transition pages to make it a little easier to understand where the information was in there. And we did move the information about the regulatory flood protection elevation. It had been back on page 40, and we moved it up earlier in the quick guide. Also, we're trying to get away from showing fill down to water's edge because that's not what we allow in our regulations. And we want to show that you're leaving at least some of that natural vegetation next to the water, and you're not actually doing filling right to the water's edge. So we're being a little more cognizant of that here in the quick guide and in the updates that we're doing of our info sheets. One other page on our main website is in the preparation, response, and recovery section. You'll see a couple of videos right at the top that are focused on local official roles before and after flooding. So if you go to those, see the videos, they're 15, 17 minutes, so they're not super long and hopefully helpful to you as local officials. And we do have, if you hit the show more, it'll give you some of the timestamps for if you want to skip ahead in sections within those videos. So talking about some of the main sites we want to focus on, the first of those is a DNR page that we've had or viewer that we've had since 2020. It was originally the Lake Flood Elevations Online, but then in 21 we added a bunch more features. We call it DNR LFEO site, Lake and Flood Elevations Online site. On the splash here, it does have a reminder that local ordinances can be stricter, and just because we're showing the flood elevation, that's not all you need to think about when you're looking at building. So we do have that reminder, though we know people don't tend to read the splash screens like that. So again, it's been available since 2020. We first focused on lake information, and we've added a lot more. If we have the flood elevations are in the FEMA flood insurance studies, it's better quality data that's been through more quality control and review, then we make that available on that site. And we have some lakes where there were other better quality studies done, if they were done by the Corps, or others where we've done some review and made sure that we believe it's a good quality study was behind it, and we can be sharing it publicly. We have that on the site. We are working to get additional lake data onto the site, but that takes time, and we haven't made as much progress on that as what hoped by now. But the information that if we do have it, we're including the 10, 25, 50 year, 100 year, 500 year information on the sites there. What we added in 21 was a lot more on the national flood hazard layers, on modernized flood zones, and I'll be showing this, so I think that's probably better just to be showing what we actually are doing, what the additions were. We did most recently add some better county and city township layers. So going right to looking at what's in that viewer, here's your icons with the layers. We've got a lot of different background options. I tend to use the second one down, which is an aerial with some labeling on it. But there's also the USGS quad layer, which is down a little further, which I find helpful at times. There is information tab, but that doesn't actually have much up-to-date information. We do have measuring lines and areas and a tool to look at the latitude, longitude. Those were additions that came in our 21 update. And we have some report options, which are again, were part of our 21 update. We do have for internal use to get that updated data in there. That's just for DNR staff. So those lakes that have published elevations that we've got available here, they'll have this darker blue color. If you click on the basin, it'll show you those elevations. It does have a little docking thing here that if you click on that, it puts it off to the side and makes it a little bit bigger so you can see more of the information at the same time, maybe not the site you're looking at on the basin. We also, if you scroll down, if there's an ordinary high and a highest recorded, that will be included in here. Note that often the datum is going to be different for the DNR information, the ordinary high and those lake elevations. If they've got a detailed study, the datum will usually be in 88, whereas most of our lake information, our ordinary highs and lake measurements are in 29, or some of them are in 1912 datum. The other lakes, if they have an ordinary high, highest recorded, that'll be shown there, but there might be some that don't have any data. So here's an example where it's the medium color of blue. It doesn't have the flood elevation data, but we do have an ordinary high and highest recorded. And I want to note here, sometimes when you come in, it will be blank here, but it'll say like 1 of 2. So you need to go advance to number 2 and see if the data is there. And that has to do with some behind the scenes stuff that we couldn't get fixed to have the numbers always show up as page 1 there. So some other really helpful stuff we've got here. If you go to our layer options, one of the top ones it'll show is our estimated 1% water surface elevations. This is for those water courses where it's not a detailed study, but we've got an underlying model. We've got some pretty good information that's been through, once it's been through a certain level of QA, QC, then we make those available, those layers available on this site. We don't call it a base flood elevation because it hasn't been through the same rigor of study that a detailed study has, but it is our best available data for a base flood elevation for that 100-year when we have these here. Other layers that we have is if we have digital firms, digital flood insurance rate maps, we try and use the same symbology, similar symbology to what FEMA uses. So the light blue colors like this. We don't load these until they are effective maps. So when they're just pending or preliminary, we don't show these layers. I'll show you the FEMA sources where you can see those preliminary and pending map layers. We were originally going to link right to the FEMA site, but their site tends to be really slow and broken down a lot, and it broke our viewer when we tried to do that. We have our own copy on our server that we draw from of these, and because of that, we don't always, we can't get them up immediately the day the new maps come out, but we try to get them up soon after the new maps come out. For those counties that still have paper maps, many of them we have what we call an unmodernized layer. So if we have that in that county, we include that option here. There's a few layers that aren't on in the default, and honestly, there's some times when our IT folks are doing some behind the scenes stuff and the look will change for a bit and a layer might go away for a little bit. We try and keep on top of that, and if something goes away that's supposed to be there, we're working with our IT folks to get it back. But some of the layers that you don't see in the default on purpose because we don't want it to be too messy is like the parcels. And in order to turn them on, normally there's going to be a line through here. If you click on it to make the eye able to see that layer, you'll see that layer. Another example would be the public water courses and public water basins layer is usually off in the default. If things are too messy and you want to turn off a layer, you can always go and click on the eye and turn that layer off. In some places where we've got a lot of the 2-foot elevation contours, you may want to turn them off to see things more clearly. Another aspect we want to point out is next to these layers, you'll see these 3 dots. If you click on it, it gives you the choice to increase or decrease how transparent it is, to decrease the opacity or increase the opacity. So in this example here, we decreased it, and it's a little bit more transparent here from what we were looking at before. So if you're trying to look at a building in the aerial photo, you have trouble seeing some things, that is an option. That if you want to still have the layer on, not turn it off completely, we've got that increase, decrease opacity option for most of the layers. And let's see, let's say we're interested in doing a map of the area. And let's say this is the area we're interested in. So I'm going to go over to our mapping or our printing options here. And you choose the map report option. And the first thing it'll ask you to do is select a point of interest. You do have to click on that spot. So it will make that little green dot. You have the choice of putting in comments. I typically like to put the address. Sometimes I'm putting the base flood elevation in there. And if it's based on, say, the upstream cross section, I'll note where it's coming from. And then you hit the print map report. And this is the template we've got for our map reports. The comments that you make will be in this section here. And so then you can save this as a PDF or print it off. That's up to you. We do allow you to zoom in and out and add whatever layers when you're printing these reports. And sometimes you'll want to maybe go a couple different scales depending on what point you're trying to make in your mapping. The basin report is the other report option we have. So if we go here to our report options, the first one I showed was the map report option where you can decide what you want to have in your map and zoom in and out. The basin report is this one here. We click on that. I must have already clicked on the basin because it brought up the choice there, but if you click, it should give you the basin that you're going to choose. And if you click on that, you'll get a report like this that shows a nice summary of the flood study elevations if they're available for that basin, and those DNR lake elevations, the ordinary high, highest recorded information, and the reminder that the vertical datum may be different and to be aware of that. So some of our next steps are getting, again, more of our basin data into the system, but we're also looking at the option to have lake level, all of the history shown. Because if you go to Lake Finder now, you can see a static 10-year history of lake levels. But often we've got lake levels going back to the 70s, even the 30s in some cases. And we want you to be able to have the option to do the full history. We have a way to do that internally, but that's something we're still working on. And we've had recent conversations with our IT folks about this. Another site is the FEMA site, Flood Map Changes Viewer. In the next few sites, I'll be talking about our FEMA sites. The Flood Map Changes Viewer, and by the way, the link did change late in 24, I think maybe in November or December, but it was not that long ago. So if you haven't been there lately, if one of your favorites, you may be sent to a redirection page. So that was updated. It pretty much looks the same. I haven't found any differences in the way it looks. It just is in a new location. So if you go to this site, if it's one of these red colors, they've got a current effective digital flood insurance rate map. But what this is really useful for is looking at where we have pending or preliminary maps. So right now, Itasca and St. Louis, they're going to be getting new maps in March. And within 6 months of new maps, well, usually within about 5 months, they don't always get it done right away at the 6-month part. But you can see the pending maps in those counties. And then in these counties where we've got this kind of pinkish color, we've got some preliminary new maps that are available. So if you go to the site, zoom down, you can use your address or zoom around. What I recommend is you go into the layers and turn off the effective firm panels and turn on the LOMAs. If you currently have a paper map, turn off the effective firm panels, because if you've got a paper map, it shows all these dots because it doesn't have a layer to share with you here. So if you do that, then those dots go away. You can see this more clearly. I like to turn on these letters of map amendments, letters of map revisions based on fill location spots here, these little purplish spots. And I'm going to talk about FEMA's National Flood Hazard Layer, which is a better way to look at the information for those LOMAs, LOMRFs. I mentioned that if it was one of the light blue counties when you first go to the site, that's where they've got pending maps, and it'll say pending zone AE. So again, this is showing what the new maps are going to have, but they don't have it on the other official current map site because it's not effective yet, but they will have it up there for several months before the new maps become effective. So folks can be looking at, well, what are the maps going to be when these new maps come out and how do they affect my property? So I mentioned the National Flood Hazard Layer, and that's another useful FEMA site. Where that is most useful, I would say, is to look at those LOMAs. So that's what I'm going to show here. That's what's unique at this site that you can't do at other sites. So if you expand the National Flood Hazard Layer here, the NFHL layer, and you go here to the LOMAs and turn that on, then when you zoom in, you'll see the LOMAs, these little purple dots. And what's nice about this is, if, say you wanted to know more about what the LOMA was for this property at this location, the more recent cases, so here I know it was applied for in 2003 or 2004 because the case number starts with the FEMA calendar year 04. The 05 means it's in region 5, so all of ours should be 05 there, and then there'll be a unique identifier. But if I click on that dot, I will get a box that looks like this. And I should mention that, okay, we're going to show what you get when you do the download letter here, but sometimes you will, the first page won't look like this, and sometimes you will need to advance one or two times to see the box that looks like this and gives you shows you the address of interest and gives you the choice to download that letter. So if you click on there, it's going to take you to a new page where you can see that determination document for that letter of map amendment, and you can download it or just look at it. It used to be you wouldn't see any information for the older cases. So like here is one from 97. In the past, they didn't have any information there, but now if you click on that, it will have the download letter here option. You do that. These really old ones, they look different, but you can see that they got a letter of map amendment for this site. They won't have as much data as newer ones will in that determination document, but FEMA is making more of those available here now.
Celan, I just wanted to add, if I could, on those older ones, sometimes the purple dot isn't exactly located correctly on the property. It's usually close, but it's not necessarily right on the property.
That's a great point, and I meant to make that, so thanks for mentioning that. Sometimes those dots will be in a really weird area. So the other thing that's nice about looking at it is you can see what was the address that was the subject property. And as Gary's mentioning, those older cases, especially before I'd say about 2005, their lat longs were not great for those cases, and they can be a ways away from where the property is. More recent ones, the dots are more likely to be right on the top of the building that the LOMA was for. So another really helpful FEMA site is the Map Service Center. And this is where you can go to see what is the current official map. As I mentioned, the DNR LFEO site, Lake and Flood Elevations Online site, we don't always get the new layers there right away. And sometimes we might miss updating a county when a new letter of map revision comes out. So this is a great site to double check and make sure you're seeing the most current map for the area you're interested in. So here you can enter an address, or you can put in the city and zoom around from there. And then you'll get this interactive map. and you can zoom in and out while you're on this page, but then usually you're going to want to move your location drop. So you can do that. So in this example, the location drop originally showed where the mailbox was up on the road, and I wanted it to be on the building I'm interested in, so I moved the location drop on top of the building. So then I want to print this, so I'm going to hit this button here is where it prints a format, a piece of that flood insurance rate map, or little piece of the firm. And if I hit that, this is what my format will look like. It will have the same scale as the original panels, this map. It doesn't let you print at different scales. So if you want something zoomed in or out more, you have to do a screen grab on the earlier page. But for the actual official format, it does force you to be at the same scale as the panel. But it's nice because it's got the legend there. It says it's an official copy of the map, gives the date that you printed that out. The other thing nice with the D firms, with the digital firms, is in this example, new maps came out in 2017, in April of 2017, but the city of Roseau in this example had a big flood control project that was just about to be effective. They were not happy these came out before that happened, but the good news is that when that letter of map revision for the flood control project came out, it showed up in this digital map and you could see it right away. So here's just showing the same ball field, same building, and these areas are no longer officially in the special flood hazard area due to that flood control project. And you can't, it was such a big project that you can't see the border for it. There would normally be a blue outline for a letter map revision. It does have the case number here, which is usually in the middle. The other thing to notice is there's these folders above the map. And in these folders, you can see if there's a letter of map revision in that area and see the official documents. If there's any LOMAs, LOMA-Fs, it'll be in this amendments folder. But also revalidations. That's a letter that comes to the community, and usually it's addressed to the mayor or the county board chair. So when new maps come out, if there were old LOMAs and LOMA-Fs, this letter says, hey, these cases that people got before, they are still valid. They don't need to do anything. So it's easy to see that because the letters that go to the mayor may not always get to all the people it needs to. When it is a digital firm, you'll have a little button here that says go to the National Flood Hazard Layer Viewer. As I said, it's only in the digital firm counties, and that was the one I was demoing. That's a good place to look at LOMA, LOMA-F dots, and other things in that layer. The other link you've got from here is show all products. That takes you to another part of the map service center, and it, depending on where you came from, what site you were at, it will narrow down and show this. But you've also got the option, if you just go to search all products from the main page, it'll give you the choice to put in Minnesota, the county you're interested in, and either all jurisdictions in that county, or you can zoom into your community. And it'll show folders with effective products. If there's any preliminary products, that won't be grayed out. You'll see the darker folder. If you're looking at St. Louis County or Itasca County right now, you'd see some products in the pending product folder. And if there's historic products, it will show that. So if you expand those effective products, then you can, if you want to get a copy of your flood insurance study report, if you want to see some of the panels, if you want to go look at letters of map change, those LOMAs, LOMA-Fs, or if you want to get the GIS layer for the county, you can expand these and get those. As I mentioned, if you go to the main search part, you can drill down to the community and hit search and see those. If you're looking for a particular case number, you can put that case number in this product ID And in this example, if you put that case number you're interested, hit search. Okay, it's one is historic, but it must have been revalidated. So I want to look at it, and you can go download that here. So that's another way to see copies if you don't go through the National Flood Hazard Layer. Paper map counties are a little bit more problematic. If you go here, you won't see the nice interactive FEMA map. You do have to, pointing out you can toggle between Street View and aerial. But if you want to get a format for a paper map, you go here, and it's a little bit more complicated. We can help you go through that the first time if you haven't done that before or it's not intuitive to you. We have some information in our Is My House in the Floodplain, but FEMA's changed the look of their site a little bit since we did that. Speaking of that, if we go to our floodplain main page and go to Maps and Technical Resources and then choose Find Flood Maps, we get to this page. And if you've been to other trainings, we talk about how it shows the status of the different counties. The blue ones are digital firm, the green ones, this is not the up-to-date version, but the green ones would be paper map counties. But at the top here, we've got a link to Is My House in the Floodplain video. And that is basically taking you through using the FEMA Map Service Center. Those sites that I was just showing, it's showing you how to do that in a video that it's about a 20-minute video. But if you hit the show more, you'll see links to different parts of the video. So if you write to how to find and print a format in the digital maps, you can do that. So shifting to another one of the DNR sites is the Mintopo site and Minnesota topography, Minnesota LIDAR. So Mintopo, if you do a search for Mintopo, you're usually going to find it, but it is where we've got our state data. Unfortunately, is not totally up to date because we don't have the newest LIDAR that's available in many parts of the state. But if you search, you might take you to this page first and tell you about LIDAR, and then it'll have a proceed to the Mintopo viewer, or you might come right directly to this site. So when you get to this site, you can put an address in here or that community. If you just put a city, it'll take you to wherever City Hall is usually. And you do have to click on the address. Oh, Cole's asking any timeline on when the new data is going to be there, and that we don't know because the new LIDAR that's being collected is so much more dense that they're still trying to figure out how to be sharing that in a better way. So unfortunately, we don't have a nice viewer to see that better data, or the newer data, I should say. So most of this is going to be from the 2008 to 2012 era when we had the first round of statewide LIDAR. So anyway, the icons that are up in the upper right, print a map options, kind of understandable. There are a few backgrounds, but it's very limited because when they were making this, they wanted it to be a little bit more faster when you're out in the field, if you're trying to look at this in the field. So we do have road, the imagery, and then the terrain in color or black and white are the main options. And there is a help document, though honestly, I know most people don't look at the help document. They try and figure things out. This little symbol here is for people to download that products. And I know that many of the engineers and surveyors, this is a very popular part of the site. Those of you who have GIS probably aren't using it, or if you're using our viewers, you probably don't use that as much, but this is the place to go if you want to get the LIDAR data in Minnesota. We don't have it available separately on the MinGeo Commons. This is where they'll send you to get that data. The layers, we don't have a lot of layers, but the default, the two full contours are on. You can come to this site if you just want to be looking at like the 10-foot or 50-foot really steep areas. But you can turn on the LiDAR flight lines, and if you do that and you click on the line, it'll tell you the date the data was collected. And for floodplain purposes, we do show the flood data. It won't show all the layers. We just show the 100-year on this, but the modernized, the DFIRM counties will have this pinkish color. The paper map counties will have this yellowish color. So when you turn on that, be aware that there is this transparency bar, because especially the unmodernized layer comes in pretty opaque, and you often want to be able to slide that and be able to see through that layer and see the aerial better. So, and here's the modernized area, which hopefully in the more recent efforts here, we've got that following the contours better than the paper map counties. So also want to make you aware of this little graph looking icon. Gives you, if you click on that, you're going to get this box, and you'll have the choice to click on points or make a line. If you click on the point elevation, this is the kind of information you can see for a point. It's the elevation and then some lat long kinds of information. For the line, it draws this profile just on the fly and is really helpful. So here's an example. I click on that little scale looking thing and I get this box, and then I want to get some point elevations around a building. I want to try and get an idea of how low their lowest adjacent grade is. So I click on the point and I'll get this box. It will only show one point at a time, but you can kind of click around and see, like in this example, again, trying to see what's that low point. Or maybe you're looking along a road and you want to see what the sag point is, what that low point is. So we've heard from surveyors that this is a pretty darn accurate, that they will look at this, and when they go out in the field and do their actual field surveys, it'll be within tenths of a foot. We haven't heard of any problems with it not being fairly close in elevation when they go out in the field. So pretty helpful. And here's an example where I, again, looked at that graph icon, got this box, and then I chose the line options. And I clicked here on the lake and then went up here because I wanted to get an idea of how steep this bank is here. And it did that on the fly. And if you hover on these points, it'll show you the distance from your first, it'll go from 0 to however many feet away you are. It'll show you your distance from your starting point, and it'll show you the elevation as you hover on these. And just be aware that our Shoreland program has put together some guidance on using this site and downloading these points. There's a way to download it into an Excel file and use that as a tool to get a more exact idea of where your bluff is, whether it's a bluff, whether it's a steep slope, where's the top and toe of the bluff. So I've got a link to those instructions, and there is a video more about bluffs determinations on our Shoreland site. So another few sites that I'm going to talk about a little bit more quickly. One of them is it's on our DNR site, but we call it the FEMA Hydraulic Model Download Application. And not all models have been uploaded. We put more of a focus on those that were the A-zone models, making those available on our website. This is, if you go to that page, this page here, it'll take you to our hydraulic model download application. You can also get there on our maps and data link from our main floodplain page. You're going to click on this launch application. You do need to use a more modern viewer. So basically, when this first came out, people were still using Internet Explorer, and it doesn't work on that. This is probably getting a little dated. So when you go there, you're going to see reaches that are in a little bit of a darker blue, a bolder color. And those are the ones where if you click on those or zoom in, you're going to be able to get a copy of the model. The gray reaches, we don't have a model on this site. It might be that there isn't a model available. or it might be that it's an older one and we haven't gotten it onto the site. So if you're looking and it's gray, we don't have the model on that site, we do have a relatively new email for femamodels.dnr@state.mn.us to send requests for the models, and our mapping staff has access to that email and can help you out. You can still send it to me or Gary or our generic floodplain site, floodplain.dnr@state.mn.us. But if it's looking for a model, we're going to loop in our mapping staff. So good to send it right to that one. So anyway, you can search in different ways. You can go by the name, you can put in an address, you can put coordinates, public land survey, the township range section kind of way. You can do zooming in and out with the mouse or your scroll. And here's an example. Let's say you've scrolled in and you're looking here at this St. Francis River West Branch, and you're going to click on that stream, and it's going to show you this information about the model. So it'll tell you a little bit about what type of model, where it is, name of the reach that we're using for the model. And then if you click on this little table here, click on that row, it'll show you a few more details about who did the modeling, topo source, other comments like that. But then if you're ready to download the model, you just, under download, you click on the download here and you'll get the model. And sometimes you'll get a couple different models. You get zip there with a couple different models. So again, mainly we've got newer Zone A models getting loaded in here. We're working on trying to get some of the older models in there, but it depended on which counties our staff were involved in pulling together the data and doing modeling for those counties. Please read the disclaimers and make sure it's the model you want for the reach you want and things make sense. And we appreciate when folks do reach out if they notice discrepancies, because we want this to be the best information for that site. So another page that you can get to on DNR's site, it had been DNR's NWI Wetland Finder, the National Wetland Inventory Wetland Finder. But as of December 9th here, so just a little over a month ago, it changed look. And so there is a new link, and you'll go to that. If you go to the DNR's Wetland Finder, this online map, you'll see this splash page here. And if you continue on, you're going to see this information. And as before, it's got the public water courses and public water basins. But one thing that it's added here is potential rare natural communities, which is kind of cool. The default will have the wetlands on in the accordion, if I'm saying that correctly, format. And you can turn that off and see it in other versions. So you can see the Circular 39 or just what they call a simplified plant, where they kind of describe the different kinds of plants, or simplified HGM layer. So you can look at it in a couple different ways. So this is the accordion, and here's what the Circular 39 looks like if you're used to the class 1 through 8 categories. And then I want to point out that if you click on a basin, it will open this box. It tells you the NWI, the National Wetland Inventory information. It'll show here, it's showing, you can see the Circular 39 type. If it's a public water basin, it'll show the basin ID. And it gives you a link to see who the Wetland Conservation Act contact would be, or who the DNR area hydro would be in that area. So, and this is again brand new, so I'm still getting used to it, and I'm hoping to get an article into the Water Talk that goes out this week, introducing folks to these updates. Another page we've got is we do have a link to some county by county water related permit contacts. And if you go to that link, you'll see this and you can choose a county. We try to keep that updated. We did just do a bunch of updates. Communities, you could be checking and letting us know if there's updates that we've missed. We're just showing at the county level, so who the zoning contacts would be. We do show links to the watersheds within that county, and we're just showing links to the main page for the SWCD or the county planning water planner and some of those things. We aren't trying to put all the names anymore, but there are some problems with the template there that we're having trouble updating, but the contact names should be fairly up to date. And then just a couple other links that we think are useful. If you use this link, it takes you to a page that shows links to all the watershed management organizations in the metro. On that page, you can click, or you can do this direct link here, and you can see a map where you can zoom in, see what watersheds people are in or a site is in, or you can put in an address and it will show you what watershed it's in the metro area. So shifting to some other information on the DNR site, we do have some climate trend information here, and that's that main page. And I will point out this climate trends map, and that will take you to this map here, which it's fairly user-friendly. You can be looking at a county or a HUC 8. You can be showing adjoining HUC 8. You can look at the whole state. You can actually look at by parks or forests or even down to deer permit areas if you want to be looking at a little area. And then you can look at precip or temperature. You can choose what period of time you're looking over, and you can make these nice little graphs. If you turn on show trend for these years, that's what puts this line here, showing the trend, and they'll show what the change is over a decade. So it's a pretty nice user-friendly site. Another more recent thing that we added to the DNR site is this climate trends affecting lakes and rivers. And I won't get into all the information we've got here. We talk about patterns and what we're seeing in terms of precip and warming trends and how that impacts lakes. But in this, what does it mean? We get into some of that, but we've also got these cool little interactive pages here. So I'm not playing it here today because it takes a little time. If you go to this site, you get this little interactive animation, I guess you would call it, for the different scenarios. One's focused more on water quality and the heating of the water, and one is more focused on more water and how you'll see more flooding, you'll see erosion, you'll see impacts to the vegetation and the buildings that are on those banks, those steeper areas. So I actually got done in less time than I thought I would. So were there any questions that came up that I didn't answer already?
I guess, Celia, if I can ask one common question I've been asked regarding FEMA's National Flood Hazard Layer website or even our Alfeo website, and that's I get asked, what year is the aerial photography that's used as a base image, and how often does that get updated? Do we know?
For the base images, that I don't know. And that'd be a good question for us to ask our IT folks. Now, what I can say is the LiDAR, if I go to like Mintopo, if I want to know, say I just zoom into an area and I want to know when that was flown, I can go into the layers here, turn on the LiDAR lines, and it looks like it's this red line here. If I click on that, it'll tell me that it was collected April 19th, 2012. So that can be kind of helpful to see, what are the LiDAR data based on, what was there, and what date since then won't be caught. Any ability to bookmark a location on these applications. I do know that when for some of the applications, it will do that. So like, for instance, I'm pretty sure that like in Alfeo, if I'm looking at a site and let's just randomly go in and look at a site, and maybe I'm interested in this site here. If I copy that, I'm pretty sure if I share that with somebody, it's going to take me to that same location. Yes. So I know on Alfeo that, in fact, when I'm trying to share the site, I have to make sure I open a new one so I'm not sharing the last place I was looking at. So in that site, I know you can share that way. I don't remember for some of the FEMA ones. I'm sorry about that, but you could check and see if that's possible with other sites.